Okay, so let's start with the sine of 135. Sine of 135. As you see, this is not an acute angle. So, but we know how to find sine values using this triangle. I'm sorry, let me just. So we have a special triangle, right? 90, 45 degrees, and 45 degrees. So in this special triangle, the side opposite to 45, if it is 1, and this side is also 1, because this is an isosceles triangle, the side opposite to 45 is also 1. And using Pythagoras theorem, you can find that the hypotenuse is root 2. Okay? So if it is 2, this is also 2, and this is going to be root 2. It is the pattern is always like that. If, for example, if it is 10, it is going to be 10 over root 2, and this is also 10 over root 2. We divide by root 2 because in this case, hypotenuse is 10. So we have to divide by root 2 and root 2. So we get this side. So this is going to help us find sine of 45, right? So let's write 1, 1, root 2. But here we have sine of 135 degrees. This is an obtuse angle, so we can make it an acute angle. But now the value of the sine is going to be positive or negative. That's important. So I'm going to show you step-by-step instructions for that, okay? First thing, we draw our Cartesian plane, okay? X-axis and Y-axis. And we go counterclockwise starting from this x-axis, okay? So this is always 0 degrees, 90 degrees, and 180 degrees. So how about 135? 135 is between 90 and 180 degrees. So I'm going to draw a terminal side for 135. Okay? Let's say this is, this is always initial side. And this is the terminal side. So this is going to be what? 135 degrees. 135 degrees. So the first step, we have to find the reference angle for 135. So the reference angle is always the angle between this terminal side and the x-axis. Look, this is the x-axis, you see? And this is the terminal side, right? This is the terminal side. So now, this angle is going to be my reference angle. How can I calculate it? So, this is 180 degrees. And this part is 135 degrees. So 180 minus 135, I'll get 45 degrees. Okay? You can also do this. So this is 135 degrees and 180. So between them, we have 180 minus 135, 45 degrees. Some of you calculating this. So don't take this angle. It is also 45 for this example, but for another example, it is not going to be the same. Okay, we are always taking this angle, the angle between terminal side and x-axis. Okay, this angle 45. So sine of 135 degrees is going to be equal to, first thing we have to see if it is positive or negative, and it is the second quadrant. In the second quadrant, sine is positive because the y-axis is positive in the second quadrant, okay? So it is positive in the second quadrant, sine is positive. Sine of 135, the reference angle of this. What is the reference angle of 135? It is 45. That's it. This is going to be our answer, but we have to find sine of 45. What is sine of 45? Let's come back here. So we have to use the SOHCAHTOA definition. So what is SOHCAHTOA? So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Yes. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. That means sine of 45. So 45, what is the opposite? 1 is the opposite. What is the hypotenuse? Root 2 is the hypotenuse. Okay. So 1 over root 2 is the correct answer, but we always rationalize the denominator. If we see an irrational number in the denominator, we just rationalize it. So we multiply both numerator and the denominator by root 2 times root 2. So we get 1 times root 2 is root 2. Root 2 times root 2 is 2. Root 2 over 2 will be the answer. So sine of 45 is root 2 over 2. So, and it is positive as you see. So it is root 2 over 2. That means sine of 135 degrees is also root 2 over 2. That's it. This was the answer. Now I'll do the other questions, the 2 questions, okay? So please ask your questions if you have.
Mister,
Mm-hmm.
why is not negative?
Because in the second quadrant, because 135 is in the second quadrant, right? In the second quadrant, sine values are always positive because sine values are the y coordinate of the intersection point, if you remember that. So you see, sine values are always positive, right? Because the y values are always positive here. For the sine values, we are going to look at the y coordinate, right? For the cosine values, you are going to look at
Yes.
the x coordinate. So sine is positive in the second quadrant because y values are positive. Y coordinate is always positive in the second quadrant. Okay? Another way of remembering this, you can draw the quadrants, first, second, third, and fourth. So for the first, all functions are positive. All students, do you remember that? All students
Yes, I remember.
take calculus. So it is S for sine, T for tangent, C for cosine. So all functions are positive here. Only sine is positive. Only tangent is positive. Only cosine is positive. Among sine, cosine, and tangent. Cotangent is the same as tangent always. So all functions are positive in the first quadrant. So look, first, second, third, and fourth. Let's make our table here. We can make it quickly using this method. It is up to you. Whatever you want, you can use. So actually, you see that sine is positive because y positive, cosine is positive because x is positive in the first quadrant, and tangent is sine positive, cosine positive, tangent is positive over positive, which is also positive. Or you can do this, all students, all functions, positive. Only sine is function, because S for sine, okay? Only sine is positive, so the other two must be negative. Only tangent is positive in the third quadrant, only tangent is positive. The other two, sine and cosine, must be negative. And you see that negative over negative is positive. And only cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant. So sine and tangent will be negative. Okay? So now let's do cosine of 210 degrees. You can ask your questions. Stop me and ask your questions, okay? I'll continue doing this. We are going to evaluate cosine of 210 degrees. So always we draw our x-axis and y-axis. And you know, this is for 0 degrees, 90, 180, 270, right? And 360 as well. It actually keeps going. We can write 400, we can add 90 degrees and we can write 450 here. Okay, so 210 is in which quadrant? This is first, this is second, and 210 will be larger than 180, right? but smaller than 270. So it must be in the third quadrant. Okay? It is very important to find the correct quadrant. So this is 210 degrees. Look, this is 180, and how many more will I get if I go? How many degrees more when I will get 210 degrees? What do you think about this angle? The reference
60.
angle. Right, look, 180 plus 60 is 240. Let's be careful.
30.
30 degrees, yes, 30 degrees. Look, I'm going 180 and 30 more. This is 210, right? 210 degrees, this angle. But I need the reference angle. Reference angle is always the angle between x-axis, you know, this is the x-axis, and the terminal side, and this is the terminal side. So this angle is going to be my reference angle. So it is 210, and this is 180. Look, this is 180. 210 minus 180, I will get what?
30.
30. Or 210 minus 180, I'll get 30. So the reference angle is 30 degrees. Okay, so cosine of 210 degrees is equal to, the first thing we are going to write positive or negative. In the third quadrant, cosine is positive or negative?
Negative.
Negative. In the third quadrant, cosine is negative. Negative cosine of, and the reference angle. What is the reference angle? 30. Okay, now I need to find cosine of 30. How can I find cosine of 30? I'm going to need my special triangle. Okay? You are going to draw it on your own. You'll put 90, whichever you want. One of these will be 30 and the other will be 60. So let's say that this is 30 and this is 60. And the side opposite to 30, let's say it is 1. The side opposite to 90, it will be 2, because this side is half of the hypotenuse, or hypotenuse is twice, 2 times the length of the side opposite to 30. So if you want to draw it just like this, for example, let's say this is 90 and this is 30, let's say, and let's say
Mister, your sound is not clear.
my sound is not clear. I don't know, it may be about my internet connection, but I don't know what to do right now. Do you hear it now?
Yeah, but okay.
Okay, so the side opposite to 90, let's say it is 2, the side opposite to 30 must be half of it, it is 1. And this is going to be root 3 and root 3. Okay, so now we can find cosine of 30. What is cosine of 30? All right, so let's remember SOHCAHTOA. So SOHCAH, right? That means
Adjacent
cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So let's find the adjacent of 30 degrees. We are dealing with 30. So look at this triangle. 1 will be opposite, right? And 2 will be hypotenuse. So root 3 must be adjacent. If you look at this triangle, so 30, we are dealing with 30. So across 30, we have 1, right? So it is opposite. And 2 is always hypotenuse. So root 3 will be adjacent. And as you see, 1 is opposite here and 1 is opposite here. We will get the same. Every time we will get the same, okay? So be careful. Root 3 is adjacent. So adjacent over hypotenuse. What is adjacent? Let's put minus because we have minus here. Now cosine of 30. Now I'm going to write cosine of 30. Cosine of 30 adjacent root 3 over hypotenuse 2. So negative root 3 over 2. As you see, cosine of 210 is going to be equal to negative root 3 over 2 will be my answer. That's it. So I'm going to do this example now. But let me remind you another way of remembering these cosine values. So if you remember, we had the table method. What was the table method? Let's remember. So with this table method, we can also find the values, values of cosine and sine at 0 degrees. So let's write 0, 30, 45, 60, and 90. And then let's write sine, first sine, and cosine. Okay? All right. So first of all, we are going to put the fraction bar here, and then we are going to divide everything by 2. Okay? Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, and divide by 2. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, and divide by 2. And then we are going to put in the numerator, we are going to put root 0, root 1, root 2, root 3, and root 4. Okay? Root 0, root 1, root 2, root 3, and root 4. For cosine, we will go back. We will do this. Root 4, root 3, root 2, root 1, root 0. So these are the values. Sine of 0, you can find. Root 0 is 0, 0 over 2 is 0. So sine of 0 is equal to 0. So cosine of 210 is negative cosine of 30. So we need cosine of 30. Where is cosine? Here, 30 here. So as you see, it is root 3 over 2, right? Root 3 over 2. So cosine of 210 will be negative root 3 over 2. So you can use also this method. It is really up to you, but I prefer this, okay? You should learn this triangle very well. All right, the third one, evaluate cotangent of 120 degrees. Let's do the last one. Evaluate cotangent of 120 degrees. So what is the reference angle for 120 degrees? Let me just draw my axes. 180 and 120 is between 90 and 180. So that's going to be somewhere around here. So that this is going to be 120 degrees. It is in the second quadrant. And all right, I have to find the reference angle for 120 degrees. So as you see, the reference angle is the angle between the terminal side and the x-axis. So this is going to be my reference angle. If this is a straight line, it is 180 degrees. 180 minus 120, it's going to be 60 degrees. So this is the reference angle. Now I have to figure out if cotangent is positive or negative in the second quadrant, in this quadrant. So let me show you two ways to find cotangent is negative or positive. So the first way, you can do this. All, students take calculus. What does that mean? Let me draw my table. Sine, cosine, tangent, and cotangent. All right, so, and in the first quadrant, in the second quadrant, in the third quadrant, and in the fourth quadrant. So all means all functions. But here in this method, we are only doing this for sine, cosine, and tangent. And tangent and cotangent have the same signs in quadrants, okay? So we are doing it only for sine, cosine, and tangent. All functions are positive in the first quadrant. So positive, positive, and positive. In the second quadrant, only sine is positive because students, S for sine. So only sine is positive. The other two will be negative. In the third quadrant, only tangent is positive. In the third quadrant, only tangent is positive. So the other two will be negative. In the fourth quadrant, only calculus, I mean C. What is C? C for cosine, not cotangent, cosine, okay? Cosine, so it is positive in the fourth quadrant. The other two will be negative. And the cotangent will be just same as tangent, positive, positive, and negative. So in the second quadrant, cotangent is negative, as you see, okay? Cotangent is negative in the second quadrant. So cotangent of 120 degrees is going to be equal to negative, because in the second quadrant, cotangent is negative. Negative cotangent of now reference angle of 120. What is it? 60. It is 60, as you see. I have to find negative cotangent of 60 degrees. That means I need cotangent of 60. Cotangent of 60. So I'm going to draw my special triangle. This is, let's say, 30 degrees. This is 90, and this is 60. The side opposite to 30 is 1, the side opposite to 90 is 2, and the side opposite to 60 is root 3. So I am dealing with 60 degrees, so the opposite will be root 3. Because root 3 is across 60, right? Because this is 60 degrees. Across 60, I have root 3. 2 will be hypotenuse. 1 will be adjacent. What is cotangent? Cotangent is 1 over tangent. So what is tangent? Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So if tangent is, you know, TOA, yeah, opposite over adjacent, right? Opposite over adjacent is tangent. So the cotangent will be, just take the reciprocal, adjacent over opposite. Cotangent will be adjacent over
Adjacent
opposite.
over
So cotangent of 60. Cotangent of 60 will be here. What is adjacent? Adjacent is 1. What is
1
opposite?
over root
1 over root 3.
So
Because
Root
opposite
3.
is root 3. And now I can make the denominators rational number, rationalize the denominator. I multiply the numerator and the denominator by root 3. Root 3. So 1 times root 3 is root 3 over root 3 times root 3 is 3. This is cotangent of 60. So that means cotangent of 120 is equal to negative root 3 over 3. I'm sorry, root 3 over 3. That's the answer. So that's it. Let me tell you another way. Let me tell you another way to find the sines of these functions. You can use this table method. All students take calculus. Or you can also do this. If you just want to know what cotangent is cosine over sine, because tangent is sine over cosine, if you remember. Cosine over sine. So what is cosine in the third quadrant? I'm sorry, second. 120 is in the second quadrant. So what is cosine in the second quadrant? In the second quadrant, cosine is negative. Negative over. In the second quadrant, sine is positive because y values are positive. Negative over positive will be negative. So cotangent will be negative in the second quadrant. Okay? cotangent will be negative in the second quadrant. So cotangent of 120 is going to be equal to negative cotangent of 60 because 60 is the reference angle, and then you got the answer.